You had mentioned once you got to spend a little bit of time playing guitar with Jim Hall.
Yeah, I got to know Jim. Yeah, who was always one of my favorites when I was young.
Well, he's like, you hear the best guitarist in the world, Pat Metheny and others, the Jim Hall,
Yeah, and he's understated. A lot of people don't get it because he's not flashy, did all that,
Right.
stuff. And but he had his own thing, extremely musical and a wonderful sound, and very thoughtful guitar player. So yeah, everybody in. I met him when we played Carnegie Hall, opened up for Frank Sinatra with Sérgio Mendes. It was quite a gig.
Oh, yeah.
We were there for 2 weeks.
Oh, my
And we
gosh.
played, opened up for him. He played with the big band. And so we were supposed to play, let's see, a 27-minute set.
Okay.
So
Don't do 28.
first night we did it. And then Sergio called us and says, guys, we got to go in this afternoon and rehearse the show. We were told we played 29. We got in trouble. So we had to, Frank probably said, oh, I don't know. Anyway, we had to go in and pare it down exactly 27.
Right.
So that took some doing.
Had to time it out.
Yeah, so we did
tighten
that.
things up.
Yeah, so we played 27 minutes a night for 2 weeks. So I had all day to hang out in New York and do this, and so
Nice.
let's see. While I was there, I think we did have a few nights off. I went to the Village Vanguard to hear Jim Hall, and I wanted to meet him too. So I went there 2 or 3 nights in a row. And I had a friend in L.A. that I played, Dave MacKay, wonderful piano player and singer, and who knew Jim Hall. They were, I think they roomed together or something at some time in New York.
Okay.
Or Cleveland or something. I think that's where Jim Hall originally was from. Anyway, he knew Jim. And he said, just tell Jim, you're a friend of mine. So I did, and Jim was, oh yeah, Dave, and blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of cool talking to him. And I told him I'm in town, and I'm a guitar player and I'm a jazz player, but I'm playing kind of more of a pop gig, but I just wanted to come and meet you and see if it's possible to get a lesson or something. And he said, yeah, sure, come on over. And, he said, maybe you could try to get a pass for my wife, Jan, to see Frank,
Oh, nice.
It's almost like in return,
Nice,
So anyway,
yeah.
I went to Jim's place on 12th Street, a brownstone, and went there. He even supplied a jazz guitar for me because I said, I got this 335, And so he had a guitar for me to play. And when I walked into the place, Don Thompson and Terry Clarke, his working trio at the time, were sitting in there watching TV. They're getting ready to go to a movie later because
Okay.
I were playing with them at the Vanguard.
Right.
And so I thought, got an audience. So we went into Jim's room and we started playing. I think we started Stella by Starlight or something. And Jim was real complimentary and it was really fun. So we played for about 30 minutes or so. And then he said, let me make something to eat. So he went in and made a fruit salad, and we went up to the rooftop and had lunch up there.
You had fruit salad on Jim Hall's roof.
Yeah, that's right. And then, some unbelievably nice guy, he walked me down to my cab to catch a cab and waited on the corner while I got a cab.
It's a real gentleman.
Yeah, and nice as heck. And then, as it turned out, I could not get his wife in.
Oh!
I know. Well, but he didn't make a big deal out of it. But I wanted to, but it wasn't allowed because Sinatra was like,
He was controlling the guest list.
yeah.
His friends got in on the guest
yeah,
list.
no,
Nobody
there's
else.
no way. Yeah, and I had to tell him. He said, okay, thanks for trying. So anyway, and then I ended up, running into him later. Loaned him an amp when he was in Kansas City.
When was that?
Oh, he played at the Sunset Grill for the
my gosh.
Topeka Jazz Workshop.
Okay.
Sometimes they do things in Kansas
Yeah,
City.
yeah.
Here. And so, gosh, I remember Charlie Gatschet went to the gig as an audience member too. That must have been 12, 15 years ago.
I saw him at the Folly
Yeah,
probably 20 years ago.
yeah. Yeah. So, and I got to talk to him a little bit then, and so anyway, so that was a lot of fun. But But just being at Carnegie Hall, I mean, for 2 weeks, that was quite an experience. So,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Brian Steever and I were asking you about this Jim Hall thing, and then some bass player came up, some famous bass player you'd play with. I can't remember. Was Eddie Gomez or some bass player that we were like shocked you had played with, and I can't remember who
Could
it
it
was.
be Leroy Vinnegar?
Oh, maybe.
I mean, he was the old Walker, man. He is unbelievable. I played with him out in Los Angeles. We had a city gig. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. I mean, I may have played with some other famous bass players. I don't know.
I know the Brian Ward Trio. They do a Leroy Vinnegar blues line.
Yeah,
You know.
I probably played it, but yeah.
Right.
Leroy and I would play at the Millie's Seafood Grotto in Redondo Beach on the weekends when we didn't have something else to do.
Right.
As a duo.
Right.
And he was a huge guy, man. Walking there. He was probably 6'6", 6'7", and really a very big man, and big hands, and a big bass sound that was nobody could replicate. Nobody could do it.
Right.
A bass player friend of mine came in and it was to sit in. You know, Leroy said, "Sure," here, and he couldn't play the bass.
Just the way it was set up.
Set up,
Couldn't
and
get a
the
sound.
heavy string, couldn't get the strings down.
Oh, because he had it set up so high.
High, and yeah, but that's where all the sound came out.
Right.
Leroy, the punch.
Right.
That's why he got higher. He didn't solo much. He just mainly was walking bass lines.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, he was a real sweet guy. So that was real fun for me. Yeah.
Bass just seems like such a physical instrument, upright bass.
Yeah. Wasn't for him, but yeah.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being able to get a good sound, and yeah, I'll hear that with, different bass players.
Yeah.
If the bass player changes, the sound of the band can change
Oh, yeah.
drastically.
There were so many players that had a kind of a thin, small sound on the bass because they wanted more chops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always like, yeah, it's impressive technique, but it just doesn't sound right. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they have the setup so low and easy that it just didn't put out much sound. So,
Right,
But
right.
Leroy was sounded like an entire rhythm section when he played. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Now was the Carnegie Hall, was that one of your better gigs? We'll keep that one in consideration, but what would you say are some of the best gigs you've done? Can
Oh,
you think
gosh,
of any?
there's so many. There's so many best and worst.
Right.
You know, gosh, I don't know. I remember early on playing with Sérgio Mendes, playing in some of these huge venues, stadiums, amphitheaters.
Right.
You know, I remember doing that. Some of those gigs were very much my favorite. I'm playing this music, and I'm just looking up. You know, I remember we're playing in the Dominican Republic in this beautiful amphitheater that, once again, Frank Sinatra had opened up. It was brand new, and he was the first artist, and then I think we were the second. And open sky, and the place was packed. It was on a mountaintop in the Dominican Republic, above Santo Domingo. And I'm looking up thinking, man, here I am doing this stuff. This is unbelievable. Anyway, I remember thinking, wow, this is just,
Well, that Sergio music's so joyful.
yeah.
It's really joyful music,
Yeah.
I've got a few of those records I'll pick up, and they're always just very uplifting.
Yeah. Well, one thing about that is I really loved Sérgio Mendes when I was in high school.
Okay.
Because of my brother's influence with jazz and R&B, because my brother got into jazz too, and he had West records. That's how I got into Wes Montgomery, because I didn't know who that was. Anyway, so I had that jazz influence in my ear, and I remember seeing Sergio do a concert on PBS or something, and he had a guitar player in the group. It ends up being Oscar Castro Neves and a fellow compadre, Brazilian, and the group sounded great. They had, because I always liked Mashkanata,
Right.
Fool on the Hill, all that stuff. And I'm listening, going, "Wow, I'd love to play in that group one day." He's got a guitar player, and he came to pass,
Did it?
somehow. So that was exciting. So the whole thing.
You manifested it.
Yeah, and then when I'm out in this big venue playing out, beautiful. Anyway, that was one of my fun gigs. Another really fun gig was playing with these great West Coast players, these veteran guys, at Linda Lavin's wedding in Malibu. It was at her reception. She
Okay.
played Alice or Rhoda or something.
Yeah.
With Mary Tyler Moore.
Right.
Linda Lavin.
Probably Rhoda.
I think it was Rhoda. Yeah. And So it was Shelly Mann on drums. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
And Monty Budwig on bass, who was one of my dear friends in L.A. Al Cohn, who was in from New York on tenor, just incredible.
Yeah, those are all A-list names.
Bill Berry on trumpet, Lou Levy on piano, and that was probably one of my favorite jazz gigs. It felt so good.
Yeah.
And Shelly Mann's time field was pretty much indescribable.
Uh-huh.
It was so buoyant. I felt like I could play just about anything.
Right.
And when he first saw me, Monty Budwig drove. Monty got me on the gig. And then we were walking into her place in Malibu on this hilltop, very exclusive, of course. And here comes Shelly Mann with his cardboard drums. They had such a thing. He had a snare and cymbals, but the shells were cardboard. I think that's what it was. They're real lightweight.
Right.
They come apart and they stack in there, like Russian dolls or something.
Right.
And so he could carry them on this whole set in a little hand cart.
Right.
And so Shelly's saying hi to Monty. He said, "Hey, why don't you have that kid carry your stuff in?" And I thought, oh, God, here we go.
You were the kid.
Yeah. And then we were playing on the break. Shelly came up and put his arm around me. He complimented. He really liked my playing.
Nice.
And that was another big plus.
Right.
From somebody of that stature.
Right.
So anyway, that was another one of my really fun gigs, playing with those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then, I've had worse gigs too. I was doing one gig with a concert with Carn. We were in Italy, in Vietri, Italy, right on the Mediterranean. Beautiful, beautiful place. And we were playing a concert. I had my Godin guitar then, which is a different setup than your regular electric guitar. That one, with regular pickups. This has piezo pickups or whatever you call it. So it's built a little differently. Anyway, so I was picking up a bottle of water they supplied us, but these tall bottles in very thin plastic. And I thought, well, this feels really weird. And so after the second tune, I picked up this bottle of water, took the lid off, and it splooshed up like a fountain. Really, and went all over the front of my guitar and shorted my guitar out, except for two strings.
Oh, yeah, because each string has its own pickup, right?
That's right, yeah. And so I think it was only the B string and maybe the A string worked. And I had to finish the concert like that. Thank God there was a piano player. Paul Smith was on the gig to help cover the chords. Good. But she had me soloing and playing. So I had to make it through the gig.
And occasionally you'd go to one of the other strings and nothing.
Yeah,
just
nothing there. It was,
You just had to.
I mean,
just start sliding up down one string.
Yeah, who trains to do that?
Nobody.
You don't practice that. And so that was one of my
That was rough.
hardest gigs. Yeah. And then when I got home, I was able to dry out the guitar. It was okay. Thankfully, it was just water.
Water dries.
Yeah. And so I took some panels off the guitar, some tools, opened up the body a little bit where I could, and let it set out in the open air on my bed in this beautiful room in Italy, and the windows open, and it dried out a few hours, and then I was okay. But that was one of the worst.